All right, let's now shift our attention to what is unfolding in the Horn of Africa, where the death toll from the terror attack in the capital city of Mogadishu has now crossed the 100 mark. Now, what has happened is that 2 car bombs exploded at a busy intersection in the Somali capital, and according to reports that have now come in, more than 300 people are said to have been injured in these twin blasts. Now, the Somalian President has said that the death toll could in fact rise further. The first of the explosions hit the Education Ministry near the busy junction in Mogadishu. The second occurred as ambulances arrived and people gathered to help the victims. And this was followed by indiscriminate gunfire. The explosions shattered windows of nearby buildings, sending shrapnel flying, and also plumes of smoke and dust were seen rising in the skyline of Mogadishu.
markii qarxa dhacay goobjoogay waa ka carray ma fahantin anigu u naxsanaadna qarxa kala ka sii dhacay sax ma fahantin maxaa qasaar aragtay markaa qasaar dhimasho dhaawac wax jiraan laakiin wax la turkoob gar maaha.
And no one has immediately claimed responsibility for the attack, although the president blamed the terror group Al-Shabaab. Now, Al-Shabaab typically avoids claiming responsibility for these attacks that result in large number of civilian casualties. The jihadist group has been seeking to overthrow the fragile foreign-backed government in Mogadishu for a number of years now.
dadkan ayay ahaayeen dad Soomaaliyeed oo ka soo kabanayo dhibaatadii nimankan ay u geysteen 5 sano ka hor kuwii dhaawac ahaa oo soo biskooday kuwaan daalmay oo curyaamiin dhinac ka ah kuwa agoon ah oo waalidiintood iyo walaalahood iyo dadkooda ahalka oo ku baxay iyo kuwa kale intaba.
Now, the attack took place at the same busy junction where a truck parked with explosives blew up on the 14th of October in 2017. Now, 512 people died in the attack and more than 290 people were injured. Now, Al-Shabaab fighters were driven out of the capital in 2011 by an African Union force, but the group still controls swathes of countryside and continues to wage deadly strikes on civilian and military targets. Now, in the month of August, the group also launched a 30-hour-long gun and bomb attack on the popular Hyatt Hotel in Mogadishu, killing 21 people and wounding 117 others. The President Hassan Sheikh Mohammed, who was elected in the month of May, has vowed after the August siege to wage an all-out war on the Islamists. However, the Al-Shabaab has managed to remain a very potent force despite the multinational efforts to try and degrade its leadership. The United States has described the Al-Shabaab as one of Al-Qaeda's deadliest offshoot organizations. Somalia, like its neighbors in the Horn of Africa, is presently in the grip of the worst drought that it has witnessed in more than 40 years. 4 straight failed rainy seasons have wiped out the livestock and the crops, and the conflict-ridden nation is considered to be one of the most vulnerable nations to climate change. But it is particularly ill-equipped to cope with the crisis as it continues to battle with a deadly Islamist insurgency. All right, now to give us more insights in terms of what exactly happened in Somalia and also which is the group that may have carried out this attack, we're being joined by Omar Mahmood, who's a senior analyst from Eastern Africa, the Crisis Group, and he's joining us live from Nairobi in Kenya. Now, Mr. Mahmood, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, this is a deadly twin blast that has taken place in the Somali capital of Mogadishu. Al-Shabaab has not taken responsibility for it yet. You know, what more do we know about why Al-Shabaab is now widely suspected to be behind these bombings as to why it may have carried out this bombing?
So the latest is Al-Shabaab has actually claimed responsibility for this attack now. They stressed that they were targeting the Ministry of Education. They see the ministry as an area where the government's basically trying to recruit youth, basically to counter Al-Shabaab and also to counter to their ideology. And so they framed it within those terms. You know, they frequently attack government targets. But what's unique here is that because this was, you know, at a busy street and whatnot, the level of civilian casualties is quite high. And usually we see Al-Shabaab not claim attacks when there is such high civilian casualties, but they have just recently come in and claimed it.
All right. Now, is there any reason as to why the Education Ministry here in this case was targeted?
Yeah, well, I mean, what the group said is they see the Education Ministry as mobilizing people against al-Shabaab, against its ideology, recruiting youths basically to fight the group. You know, the new government that's come into power has said they want to counter al-Shabaab on three fronts. You know, one is militarily, one is financially, because the group has a very extensive extortion and taxation racket, and the third is ideologically. And so I think the attack on the Ministry of Education is a response to that third track of the government trying to counter al-Shabaab and delegitimize it as an ideological actor.
All right, interesting. Now, also the fact that the government in Mogadishu has been trying to, in some ways, you know, degrade the capacity of al-Shabaab to mount these kind of deadly terror attacks has been ongoing for many years now. But despite of that, al-Shabaab seems to be growing stronger and are able to strike targets at will. Why is it that the government in Mogadishu, despite the Western backing that it has not been able to seriously dent the capacity of the al-Shabaab to carry out deadly terror attacks like this?
So the problem on the government side has always been one of coherence or unity. And so frequently you see the Somali political elite are basically infighting against each other about particular other issues, and al-Shabaab is a secondary concern. You know, there's still a very evolving state-building model, you know, in trying to sort out the relationships between the government and the center and some of the peripheral states and whatnot has been quite contentious. The political elite have been pretty divided time and time again. And so that's, you know, the oxygen that al-Shabaab breeds off of. It very much gets involved into taking advantage of grievances, exploiting, you know, those who are marginalized, those who feel left out, or those who feel, you know, bypassed by the government. And so that's always been part of the challenge. Right now, this new government, what they're trying to do is unify Somali society against al-Shabaab to counter that.
All right, very interesting. Now, the last question, Mr. Omar Mahmood, that I want to ask you is, at this point of time, it is being estimated that al-Shabaab still has anywhere from 8,000 to 12,000 active fighters. It also controls large swathes of territory in Somalia, rural land, especially in Somalia, and it is predominantly the towns and cities where the central government in Somalia is able to exert its control. You know, looking at how things have been going in the spate of terror attacks that al-Shabaab has been able to carry out at will, is there any prospect in the near-term future that the government in Mogadishu will be able to, in some ways, you know, break down the capacity of al-Shabaab from carrying out these terror attacks and also exert its influence far beyond these urban areas?
So one very interesting thing that the current government is doing is trying to engage at a community level, at a grassroots level, with basically local militias that have risen up against al-Shabaab. And so they've started doing this in the center of the country, and they've had some success in rooting out al-Shabaab from certain villages, certain areas. There are ideas that they could expand this model to the rest of Somalia. But the key here is really persistence. You know, it's not that hard actually to take back a particular piece of territory from al-Shabaab. What's hard is to hold that territory, to deliver services, to be present in the long run, to basically show the local community that the government is there for you and that they are a better bet than al-Shabaab in the future. And that's always where government efforts have failed. So I think there's a very interesting initiative going on right now, a lot of momentum around it. If the government can sustain that, then I do think it can make a significant dent. But in the long run, I would argue that there is no military solution to this conflict as well. You know, eventually, you know, other sorts of tracks and engagement, these sorts of things might need to be considered. The timing might not be right for that right now, but in the long run, we do have to think about the fact that a military solution won't resolve this problem.
All right, we'll have to leave there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Omar Mahmood, for joining us and getting us all those insights there.
Thank you for having me.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.